Welcome to
Four Kids Flashback. Hi there, I'm Tara Sands, and welcome to the introductory episode of Four Kids Flashback. You're probably wondering who we are and why we're doing this, so hopefully we'll answer those questions. Hello, Steve.
Hi there.
Would you like... We're learning how to do this. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Steve Yurko. I am a professional storyboard artist working in TV animation and also a just longtime anime fan and a longtime unprofessional podcaster.
He has a One Piece podcast that's very
Yeah.
popular, and he has a mind like a steel trap. He remembers some of the stuff from the Four Kids era, and I don't remember. I guess I should say
Can't remember anything I was learning in school at the time, but I could assure you I remember so many things from that television block that ran for so long.
And that's why I often say on this show, "Thank God you're here." So who am I? I guess I should say that.
That's more important. Like
it's not more important.
We'll get
than
back
you.
to me, but yeah.
No,
There's
not enough of you.
there's a reason why you're here.
So I am here because I witnessed a lot of this Four Kids, the hijinks and the fun. My name is Tara Sands. I'm a voice actor. My very first job in anime or dubbing was on the show Pokemon back in the late 90s. And I got to work on tons of shows at Four Kids over the years, and met a lot of great people. And I go to conventions all the time and get asked questions about Four Kids that I can't answer. I just don't know the answers to these questions. And I thought, well, who's going to give them these answers? So I thought, why not interview the people who worked there? The people who often don't get the credit. You know, as actors, we go to these conventions and we get a lot of attention. I think more attention should be paid to the people who were writing the shows, directing the shows, editing the shows, doing the promos, making the decisions on acquisitions. Those are the people who can actually answer these questions, and I wanted to shine a spotlight on them.
And as for me, I think my reasoning for being here is I've been a co-host on the One Piece podcast for a very long time now, since 2009. That's how long we've been doing this show.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, 1,000 episodes, I guess.
There's always One Piece in the One Piece stand, for sure. But recently, I have gone back and revisited the Four Kids version of One Piece, and yeah, there is a history there between the One Piece anime and Four Kids.
For sure. How many episodes did Four Kids do?
Off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember. A little over 100, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll definitely get into One Piece on this podcast, for sure.
But kind of what came out of that podcast, too, was my co-host Alex and I we had so many questions that we just thought, we're never going to get the answers to these, because I knew for sure, I'm like, you can't just ask the voice actors why,
because we don't know
some of these choices were made. But like, we would constantly just be like, it's like, we would love to know. We would love to, it's like a common phrase about to be a fly on the wall during this production.
Absolutely. Part of my wanting to make this show was a podcast called Fly on the Wall that goes behind the scenes at Saturday Night Live and the way they talk to all the cast members and writers. And I thought, I want to do that, but with Four Kids. So Fly on the Wall is they already stole that title, but that is sort of the way I look at all of this. And again, there's the biggest problem is that our memories have faded with time. So a lot of the people we talk to, we're all just trying to remember these conversations and why certain things happened. But we've recorded a few episodes already, and I think you're going to be happy with some of the answers we've gotten. I love watching Steve's face light up when a question gets answered that he's obviously had burning
Mm-hmm.
in his mind for years. So that's been really fun to just see old friends and Steve's perspective coming from being someone who watched this as a kid is so invaluable. So I should also say this show is being produced by Maji Media. And so when I first spoke to Zach about it, he said, I have the perfect co-host for you. And he was correct. So it's working out.
Yeah, and I should have realized I should have introduced myself as like a kid who was a huge Pokemon fan, and then I grew up to be a disgruntled teenager on the internet. That was an anime fan.
Yeah. Where did you write your disgruntlement? Was it on? There wasn't a Reddit board back then. Where were you venting?
I remember joining a forum called Shaman King Uncensored back in the day, and that was, and then eventually when I was getting into One Piece, I was clued in on a One Piece fan forum called Arlong Park back in the day.
Okay.
And. And at some point, 4Kids decided let's have a forum of our own on our website. So all of us flocked to that.
Well, we'll have to find out who ran that forum and interview them.
But what I could remember was I think, at least maybe this is my own personality, it wasn't so much we didn't go there just to troll and bombard anything 4Kids. It was more like we should go over there and kind of like spread the word. It's like, hey, this isn't the definitive version of this show.
Right. You were hardcore anime fans who wanted people to know what had been changed in the episodes when it was being censored for children.
It's like I could have spent my time doing anything else. But no, I remember, and I'm pretty sure there's probably maybe there was some cringy stuff back then, but I remember joining the forums and kind of just like being in like, hey, they changed this, they changed that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have to defend myself right here, I think it was just more so like, anime distribution was so different back then. And
yes.
I think also, the early 2000s was an anime and manga boom. And the American Shonen Jump came out around this time. So many familiar anime titles were in this magazine. And that's, Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King was in this, One Piece, of course. And what was so... If I could explain the frustration as a fan was these translations of the manga were very faithful to the original version,
right?
And like even though the Shaman King manga predated the anime dub, but like the Yu-Gi-Oh manga it just kept the Japanese names of the characters, all that, and it's much more mature. And we were like, oh, this is great. And I'm reading Shaman King, like, oh, I love this manga, and then the anime comes over here and it's a
and unfortunately the only way for it to be aired on Saturday mornings was for edits and changes to happen. So
and if I could
so that's the bummer.
And if I could just defend like my frustrations, it was just because back then you didn't have streaming like it is now.
Of course. Yeah,
it's like this might be the only way you can watch this anime. I want to experience.
It was your only option.
Yeah, and knowing like it's not the full version. I think that's if I could defend all those people.
No, you don't have to defend yourself.
I just think that's where the frustration came from.
Well, you were a kid without access. You were a kid without access to the full version that you wanted to see. So that is frustrating, and then you get excited that it is coming to the States. Only to find out that it's not actually the version you want to see.
Exactly.
So I understand that frustration. But on the flip side of that, I think there's been, in recent years, with anime being bigger than it's ever been, in my view, there's been this like kind of love that for 4Kids for just introducing so many kids to anime in the first place. You were an exception because you had already had your entry to anime.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of younger kids were watching these shows, not even necessarily knowing they were anime, but just getting into them. And then as they grew older, with more internet access to other things, that was the starting point for them to then become really intense anime fans. I love doing deep dives on like Twitter posts or X posts, but I'm going to insist on calling it Twitter forever, where where someone will write, say one nice thing about 4Kids. And the responses are hilarious. You know, they range on everything from naming specific voice actors or specific episodes to saying the best thing about them is they closed. Then there'll be a whole post about they introduced me to anime. I'm so grateful. So I want to kind of talk about all of that stuff. And the music, people really love a lot of the music. Hopefully we'll speak to some people who wrote those songs. But this is kind of my love letter to 4Kids, warts and all, is sort of how I'm viewing it. You know, a very realistic view of the company that is responsible for introducing millions of people to anime. I'm grateful to be working in anime. I'm sure you, as a child, you had a great eye. Since you're an artist now, you watched this with a very different eye than I did. For sure. I have a terrible eye.
And ear, too. I mean, it's, I have so much appreciation for so many of the actors that were in these dubs. And a lot of them, I would say, like, I think my years of, like, starting to go to conventions about, like, in the, early 2010s and all that, that's, like, that's when 4Kids was basically done. And I wasn't seeing New York actors at conventions and all that. And when, like, at the time when Funimation was really kind of very prominent, as they were like the only big company going at that point in anime, those actors were out there telling their stories and sharing their experiences on dubs. And it almost felt like, the actors that were in the 4Kids side of things in New York specifically, I almost feel like it was going to get lost to time. We were never going to hear from these things. And as time moves on, of course, you're talking about, memory fading and all that. We might not ever get the chance to hear some of the stories.
Write it down before you forget.
Right.
Yeah. And now there are other podcasts about this time going on. Michael Hagney has one called Original Pokemon. You should definitely check that out. I know Veronica Taylor is working on one right now. So hopefully there will be this boom of stuff from all of us. Eric Stewart and Dan Green have a podcast called Heart of the Cards. Definitely check that out.
That's the thing, like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like, people always talk about that, but it's like, who's going to talk about Funky Cops?
We need to talk about Funky Cops. We're gonna, I mean, I hope we do some watch-alongs. Also, maybe Funky Cops could be the first one.
And also, like, it's also like, it's a pretty good time right now because a lot of the 4Kids licensed anime is being like rescued by Discotech. Specifically.
Fighting Food on shows like that.
Yeah, a lot of these shows are getting like new physical complete releases, dubs and subs. I think like Fighting Food Ons, I think, is like on Retro Crush TV maybe at the time of this. So like there's still like now that there's a chance to revisit some of the stuff. Now's the time. Yeah.
So what happens in this, we're finding when we do these interviews, there are some names and places and things that come up that we are familiar with, but we're realizing the audience might not be familiar with. So we're gonna give you kind of a glossary of terms, as Steve put it, which I think might be helpful as you continue listening.
Yeah, and the reason why we emphasize this is because anime dubbing in New York didn't start with Pokemon.
No.
There was plenty of stuff. Like a lot of these voice actors were working in anime before Pokemon really came around. I would say like when 4Kids really kind of cemented themselves. So like there's way more there, there's a little bit more history there than I realized that led up to 4Kids. And that's where you come in.
Okay, so this is your glossary or your primer, if you will, of terms. We talk about flap a lot. Sometimes we call it lip flap. Sometimes we just say flap, but basically that is the mouth movement that we are trying to match when we dub anime. What other things, Steve, has been confusing for you? I know there's like a ton of studio names.
There's Taj.
Taj Productions is the studio we first recorded at. Oh,
Mhm.
second studio we were. Sorry. See, I'm already screwing it up. Buttons was the first studio we recorded at. So when we refer to Buttons, that's a recording studio. Taj Productions, also a recording studio, and also they were responsible. I believe in Jim Malone and Michael Hagney's episode, we'll talk more about how Taj Productions was involved in Pokemon at the very beginning. Well, we should also say that 4Kids was originally a licensing company. They were actually
Yes.
started 50 years ago. They are now closed. They started as a licensing company called Leisure Concepts, Inc., which then became 4 Licensing Corporation, then 4Kids Entertainment. It was on the New York Stock Exchange. It was a really big company that initially, and when I say licensing company, I mean they made stuff. So they would license, let's say, Cabbage Patch Kids, and then they would make this in the U.S. or wherever, whatever territories they had the rights to. If there was a Cabbage Patch Kid lunchbox, they might have made that, or T-shirts, or watches, or so a licensing company that then moved into production, which I think is unusual. Maybe we'll get a licensing expert on here to explain how that works.
It definitely explains like the acquisitions of 4Kids over the years in terms of anime.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, if you ever wondered like why did they license this show, it's like because they saw toys, card games, merch, all this stuff. Like, look no further than the original Pokemon boom in the late 90s. It was everywhere, not just toys,
Everywhere,
but Pokemon was on Kraft macaroni and cheese boxes.
Right, and that's also what I'd love to talk to someone about. I don't know which products they had the right licensing rights to. Hopefully we can get some answers about that. That's interesting to me. What else should we talk about? We've given you the why, the who, and the what, I guess. We've tried to cover our bases with this intro episode to sort of let you know what's in store for you.
Yeah, I mean, and we can let you know what the show is not going to be.
A musical. It's not going to be a musical.
Damn. And 4Kids was always credited for its great music.
The music, we will play some music, but we're not going to be singing the episodes.
I've grown a lot since my teenage years. I'm not angry. I'm not.
You're not angry anymore.
This isn't meant to be like a total dunk.
No.
Warts and all is a very apropos description of this show.
All companies produce hits and misses. That goes with the territory. When you're producing that, I think this is what I've started learning. When you're producing that much at such a fast pace, perfection isn't an option, especially when you're dealing with censorship and so many chefs in the kitchen. Let's say you're trying to please everybody, and you're never going to please everybody. So hopefully, children were pleased, and I think they were.
Yeah, like I said, and I think there's some interesting stories to tell for sure.
Yeah.
I also. This is my perspective. I don't want to just answer convention questions. I don't want to be like, how did you enjoy playing this character? And
right. Well, that's a great point. That was part of, again, one of the reasons I was doing this. I was on a panel with Michael Hagney, and he answered the jelly donut question definitively. And I thought, I want more than just the people in this room to hear that answer, because maybe then we don't have to keep answering it, maybe. And I know people do want to know, and sometimes in these panels we get some really interesting questions, and you can tell who the fans are that want those answered. And then a 5 or 6 year old stands up and says, what's your favorite Pokemon? And we're sort of off track from not off track, but then the other people are not really getting their questions answered. And those are the more fun questions to me. So you're absolutely right. We're trying to maybe ask some different questions and interview different people than you'll see at a convention.
Yeah. And there's so much misinformation out there, or just a lot of it's just come from little to no information out there. And I want there to be more of an authentic resource to so many of these questions. Like I want some real answers. And we might hear some differing stories, different experiences, but I'd rather that coming from the people that were there and not just misconceptions and guesswork on the internet from some people.
I agree. So let's do it. Now you should go listen to episode 1. Enjoy! 4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4kidsflashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. And for podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.